Now, I know I've already done a couple of videos on this topic, but let's be clear. This is a pretty big story. This is a pretty big rumor. This is something that, if it does actually end up happening, could represent a bit of a seismic shift in the NFL and at least the NFC, and potentially, if Russell Wilson was traded to the Chicago Bears, certainly in the NFC North. I've done videos talking about this, whether Bears fans really truly want to trade for Russell Wilson, and talking about the fact of you cannot just sit there and assume and think that trading for Russell Wilson alone brings you a Super Bowl. Your whole mindset of mediocrity must change. You can't just trade for the quarterback and assume everything else works. If you trade for Russ, at that point in time, the future does not matter. The future is now, and you must truly go all in. Period. If you're not prepared to do that, if you're not prepared to fundamentally shift and change how the team is built to go away from the defense and go more towards the offense, then you really don't want Russell Wilson. If you're not prepared to give up what it would potentially take to get him, and you're not prepared to go all in and sacrifice the future to support Russell Wilson, build around Russell Wilson, and try to win a championship with Russell Wilson being the dude, then you don't really want Russell Wilson. And I've talked about other things pertaining to this trade, but today I just wanted to talk about, because I've alluded to it in a couple of other videos, but really wanted to isolate on this and really talk about how just weird and dumb it would be for the Seattle Seahawks to actually trade Russell Wilson, especially right now. Like, there are several things about this that are just really weird, and several things about this that, I guess, weird, dumb, stupid. Yeah, all of it. Just really, really stupid. Like, let's just say, for argument's sake first, the single weirdest and stupidest thing about all of this is the fact that you're looking at trying to trade away a top 3 to 5 quarterback in the league. I guess an elite guy who at age 32 is still in the peak of his career, who you've won a Super Bowl with before. Granted, several years back now, when he was a much younger guy, you've been to 2 Super Bowls with him. You've been relatively consistently in the mix over the years as the team has shifted away from being Legion of Boom focused to being Russell Wilson focused. The point being is you've actually got that dude. How many teams in the NFL wish they had that dude? And you actually have him. You have him for several more seasons in terms of his current contract. You have several more years of his peak of his career. And you're trying to trade him away now? Like that, just in a bubble in and of itself, is weird, dumb, stupid. The hell would you want to do that for? And then when you think about some of the particulars about, well, Russ wants more say-so. Russ wants the team and the offense to totally go through him, and he didn't do so well in the second half when it did, and the organization doesn't trust in him. And this is where it gets really weird and dumb and stupid too. Like, yeah, you could say that Russell Wilson had some bad games in the second half of the year. He did. He also had, yet again, another less than stellar performance in the playoffs, which for some Bears fans, I think should be a little bit of a flag or a cause for concern. Doesn't mean you don't make the deal. It's just, you can't just assume that this fixes everything, because Russ has a history of not being great in the playoffs. Let's be clear. But because you don't want to put him in the best possible position, because you don't think that the dude that is the best player on your team, the dude that plays the most important position in the game, because you don't trust him, for whatever reason, you're thinking about potentially trading him? Like, that's just weird. That's dumb. That's stupid. How many teams spend years, decades, generations? Look at my Bears! Generations trying to find that dude at the position. And you've now got one. And you've still got potentially several more years of gotten that one. And you want to move on from him or even considering it? That's dumb. And if you're saying you're trying to make a statement that no single player or no single member of the organization is bigger than the organization itself, then that's one conversation to have. But then I look at it and I say, okay, you're basically looking at choosing between a 69-year-old head coach in Pete Carroll and a 32-year-old franchise-level, elite-level quarterback in Russell Wilson, if I gave you those two options, who are you choosing? Anybody with brain power is going to choose the 32-year-old Russell Wilson, period. You really think Pete Carroll's going to be a high-level coach in the league for another 5 or 7 years, let alone 2 or 3? Whereas Russ could potentially be that for 3, 5, 7, 8 years still at his position. It is not a hard decision to make. So it's really weird and stupid that the Seahawks would potentially be choosing the head coach that's almost 70, the geriatric head coach, over the prime of his career, future Hall of Fame, Super Bowl championship winning, elite level quarterback. That's just mind-numbingly stupid. And what really doesn't wash to me is why would you sit there then and potentially explore trading him before June 1st to take on an almost $40 million dead cat pit between the next 2 years? The hell would you want to do that for? And then, calm down, Bears fans, when I say this, but you know I'm not wrong here. If the Seahawks said, hey, we're going to trade him to Chicago, the hell is Chicago going to give you in terms of meaningful assets? A couple of first-round picks? Well, the first-round pick this year is at 20. That's not going to position you better to get a young, long-term answer at the quarterback position to replace Russ. And if you're not in a position where you want to do that, if you're Seattle, then what the fuck are you doing? That's stupid. And if the Bears trade for Russ, they're certainly, you would expect over the next couple of years, not going to have a top 5 or 10 pick. So I just don't see where the hell the appeal of this would be. You're giving up certainty at the most important position by far in the game of football, the quarterback position, where you not only get decent play, you get high-level, elite-level performance year in and year out now from Russ. And you want to move on from that without having a clear path forward? Are you going to trade for Sam Darnold? The fuck's going on here? What the hell are you talking about, man? I mean, that makes no sense. It doesn't matter if you acquire 3 future first-round picks from the Bears. If none of them are going to be in a good striking position to help you position yourself to get a quarterback either at that slot or by packaging it and moving it up, then what the hell are you doing? And then what really doesn't make any sense to me about this is to trade him. You take on the honor of having to take on $40 million in dead cap when you're a team that's already kind of cap-strapped as it is. That makes no sense. Why would you pay so much money over the next couple of years to let somebody else have an elite quarterback? Huh? And then what really doesn't make any fucking sense about this to me, it's one thing if you said, hey, we've reached a point, even though you just went 12-4, just won the division, seems like an awfully weird time to be sitting there and hitting the reset button in and of itself. That seems pretty weird to think that this is the right time to do it, and really, frankly, stupid. You should be thinking about how you go all in around Russ to try and take that next step to become a championship team. Not sitting there saying, yeah, let's trade the franchise player. That'll work out well for us. That's just stupid too. But what really makes this whole thing sound all types of stupid here is the fact that the Seahawks just a season ago basically made one of those we're all in moves by giving up 2 future first round picks to acquire Jamal Adams. The hell sense would it make to have made that big move for Jamal Adams to then sit there and 1 season later turn around and trade the guy in Russell Wilson that was a major impetus as to why you traded for frickin' Jamal Adams to begin with? You gave him 2 first-round picks for an in-box safety. And now a year later, you're potentially talking about trading Russ? So even if you get the 3 first-round picks, it's not like it's giving you a plethora of draft pick capital here. You're just recouping losses from the Jamal Adams trade. That's stupid too. So it's like you're taking a huge loss on the one end, trading the future Hall of Fame elite level quarterback to then get some first round picks in the future to replace what you previously gave up to trade them away for a safety. I guess none of this makes any fucking sense whatsoever. And maybe it's not going to make sense. And maybe this still goes down and it still happens. And if it does, the Seahawks General Manager John Schneider, head coach Pete Carroll, deserve absolutely every single little bit of criticism that they get for this. Because if you think Russ is the problem, you're wrong. If you want to know what the problem is, Pete, John, look in the mirror. Have you looked at your draft history in recent years? It's damn near crimes against humanity. Yes, for every steal you get in a DK Metcalf in round 2, you've got somebody that you took in the first round they had no fucking business reaching that hard for. See Rashad Penny. See Fetty. Need I continue? Imagine looking at that draft history in recent years, the trading away of Frank Clark and all this other shit, and thinking to yourself, you know what, we don't trust in Russ. You don't trust in Russ, you shouldn't trust in your damn self. Because let's even be clear here, as much credit as the Seahawks get for drafting Russell Wilson and having him in the fold, that's great and wonderful, but he was still a third-round pick. They took a look at their draft board and determined that Bruce Irvin was a better player. Bruce Irvin provided more value than a Russell Wilson did. Yes, they ultimately get the credit because they took Russ in round 3. But they still took Russell Wilson in round 3. You know what I mean? If they really knew how great he was going to be, if they really knew what type of player he was going to be, they would have taken him in the first round anyways. Fuck the haters. And at the end of the day, they would have been absolutely vindicated. So one of the things that people like to ascribe to them most has as much luck as anything else. Well, shit, at this point in time, third round, you go back into that time, they're looking at Matt Flynn being the starter. Like, come on now. I mean, so this just makes no damn sense. And if you're a Seahawks fan, I would love to hear from you. Like, please tell me how this isn't weird, dumb, and all types of stupid. Because with all the things that I just mentioned, the thought of this, and especially now, the Seahawks trading Russell Wilson would just be weird and stupid.